All right, so let's dive right in. Today, we're looking at a company that's really shaken things up when it comes to cryptocurrency.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about MicroStrategy. They've basically gone all in on Bitcoin and transformed themselves into like this Bitcoin powerhouse.
Interesting.
But before we get into that, got to give a shout out to our sponsor, Kwolfs.
Kwolfs. Okay.
They're building a live streaming community trading platform.
So kind of like what? Bring in people together?
Exactly. And their goal is pretty ambitious. They want to be the TikTok of financial markets.
Oh, wow.
So if you're into finance, want to learn, connect with other traders, maybe show off some of your own market moves,
Yeah.
Kwolfs is worth checking out. Okay, now back to MicroStrategy.
All right.
So this company, they actually started out in enterprise software, right?
Right. Yeah.
But get this, in the past year alone, their stock has shot up, ready for this, 584%.
Seriously.
I know, outperforming even giants like NVIDIA.
So what's their secret sauce?
Bitcoin, that's the key.
So they're all in on Bitcoin.
Big time. They've managed to accumulate a mind-blowing 402,100 Bitcoin.
Whoa.
That's almost 2% of all the Bitcoin that's out there.
No way.
So they're basically becoming like a new kind of financial institution, but built around this digital asset.
So they're not just like buying up a bunch of Bitcoin. They're actually doing something with it.
That's the thing. They're not just buying it. They're creating something entirely new. It's like they're bridging traditional finance with this whole Bitcoin world.
I see. Yeah.
They've come up with this range of financial products
Yeah.
that use their Bitcoin holdings.
Like what kind of products?
It's kind of like, think of gold refinery, right?
Okay.
They take raw gold, they turn it into bars, coins, jewelry, all that.
Right.
That's what MicroStrategy is doing with Bitcoin.
Interesting.
So let's say someone like me,
Uh-huh.
I'm intrigued by Bitcoin, but maybe a little hesitant to just jump right in and buy it directly.
Sure.
So with MicroStrategy, there's a way to kind of dip my toes into this asset class through more familiar financial products.
So they're catering to both the newbies and the veterans, huh?
Exactly. They've got products for both the risk takers and the cautious investors.
Nice.
They've got everything from leveraged options, amplifying those potential gains and losses, to fixed income products.
That are more stable.
Yeah, more stable, more predictable returns, similar to like bonds.
Gotcha.
So depending on my risk appetite and investment goals, there's a whole range of ways to get involved with MicroStrategy and their Bitcoin approach.
No, that's pretty cool.
And that's where this idea of a digital asset yield curve comes in.
Digital asset yield curve. Okay.
So you're probably familiar with the traditional yield curve, right? Like in the bond market.
Yeah, vaguely.
So basically, bonds with longer maturities usually offer higher yields because you're taking on more risk holding them for a longer time.
Right.
Well, MicroStrategy is doing something similar with their Bitcoin products. Different risk-return profiles, but across different time frames.
Whoa, so they're creating like a whole new market based on Bitcoin?
It really seems that way. This Bitcoin refinery model, it's super innovative, but how are they actually making money from it?
Good question, yeah.
I mean, they're sitting on a ton of Bitcoin, but they're not just hoarding it, are they?
No, they're not. One of the key ways they're making money is through yield generation. They're lending it out, collecting premiums on options contracts, and strategically managing leverage to squeeze out every little bit of return they can.
So they're making that Bitcoin work for them.
Exactly.
I can definitely see why investors are excited about this. It's like they've found this way to make Bitcoin generate a steady income.
Yeah.
But is it sustainable, though? Is this something that other institutions can actually copy?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right. Everyone on Wall Street wants to know.
Well, their Bitcoin yield KPI, basically how efficiently they're generating returns from their Bitcoin, it jumped from 1.8% in 2022 to a whopping 5.1% in the third quarter of this year.
Seriously.
That's drawing some serious attention.
I can imagine. You don't see those kinds of yields in traditional finance that often.
Right.
Especially with all the perceived risk around Bitcoin.
And that's exactly why what MicroStrategy is doing is so disruptive. They've kind of cracked the code on making Bitcoin a viable investment for institutions that are used to predictable returns and those regulated markets.
So it's not just about buying Bitcoin. It's about building this whole ecosystem around it, right?
Right.
Generating yield, offering a bunch of different products, and like you said, building that bridge to the traditional financial world.
Exactly. And they might just be changing how Wall Street sees cryptocurrency because of it.
Interesting.
You know, they're addressing those concerns that have kept those big institutions on the sidelines, like, regulatory compliance, risk management.
Right.
They're proving that you can work within the system and still leverage the potential of Bitcoin.
That's fascinating. It sounds like MicroStrategy could be leading the way, bringing Bitcoin into the mainstream.
They very well could be.
But what does all of this mean for the average investor? Someone like me, or someone listening to this right now and thinking, okay, MicroStrategy sounds cool and all, but how does this affect me?
That's a great question, and one we're going to get into in part 2 of this deep dive. All right, welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah, welcome back. So we were talking about MicroStrategy, and how they were kind of shaking up the world of finance with their Bitcoin play.
Yeah, they're really doing something different.
Yeah, but, for someone like me or anyone listening, you might be thinking, okay, this MicroStrategy thing, it sounds interesting, but how does it actually affect me?
Right, let's break that down a bit.
Yeah, let's get practical.
So basically, MicroStrategy's success could make it way easier for the average person to invest in Bitcoin.
Really?
Yeah, but indirectly, You wouldn't have to buy Bitcoin directly on an exchange or anything.
Oh, interesting.
It's kind of like investing in gold, right?
Yeah.
You can do it through a gold ETF or by buying stock in a mining company.
Right.
So instead of dealing with all the, the complexities and the potential security risks of owning Bitcoin directly, you could just buy shares of MicroStrategy.
Oh, okay. So instead of buying Bitcoin, I buy stock in the company that's buying Bitcoin.
Exactly. And as MicroStrategy grows, there's a good chance they might even get included in major stock indexes like the S&P 500.
Oh, wow.
And if that happens, you'd see institutions start buying their stock like crazy, which would probably push the price up even higher.
Interesting. So even if I don't own Bitcoin directly, the growth of MicroStrategy and its impact on the market, it could still benefit me.
Exactly. Especially if you own any index funds or ETFs that track the S&P 500.
Oh, I see. So it's kind of like this ripple effect.
Yeah, exactly.
MicroStrategy's moves, they benefit Bitcoin investors directly, but also indirectly, even those who are passively invested through things like index funds.
Right. And remember we talked about MicroStrategy's plan to raise like $42 billion between 2025 and 2027.
Yeah, that was a crazy number.
Well, if they pull that off, it would be a pretty clear signal that institutional appetite for digital assets, it's growing fast.
Wow. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Are they planning to buy even more Bitcoin with that?
Potentially, yeah. But it's not just about hoarding Bitcoin, It's about building a whole financial infrastructure around it.
Oh.
Creating a wider range of investment products, and bridging that gap between traditional finance and the digital world.
So they're aiming to be more than just a Bitcoin company.
Right, exactly. They're positioning themselves as this gateway to digital assets for institutional investors. And that role, it could become super important as the market matures.
So this raises a big question. What does all this mean for the future of finance? Are we at the beginning of a new era where digital assets like Bitcoin become a regular part of investment portfolios?
Certainly possible.
A pretty big shift.
Yeah, we're already seeing institutional investors change how they view Bitcoin. It's not just a speculative asset or an inflation hedge anymore. They're starting to see it as a store of value, like a digital gold and a potential driver of long-term growth.
That's really interesting. But what about the risks? What happens if the price of Bitcoin crashes?
That's a valid concern. Yeah.
Or what if regulators come in and try to shut this whole Bitcoin refinery model down?
Those are definitely risks, no doubt.
Right.
But MicroStrategy's strategy, it seems to be built around mitigating those risks,
Okay.
They're operating within existing regulations and offering products that are designed for institutional investors who need that oversight and transparency.
So it's not just about throwing all caution to the wind and going all in on Bitcoin.
No, not at all.
It's about navigating this new landscape strategically and responsibly.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you need to really understand the technology, figure out the risks and the rewards, and make smart decisions based on, your own investment goals and risk tolerance.
And as MicroStrategy keeps going, it's becoming clear that they're not just influencing digital assets, they're impacting how Wall Street thinks about finance in general.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. They're pushing the boundaries.
Absolutely, blurring the lines between the old and the new.
Right. And whether they succeed or fail, it could have a huge impact on how we invest and manage money in the future.
No doubt about it. This deep dive's been pretty eye-opening.
It really has. But before we wrap things up, what are some key takeaways for our listeners? What can we learn from MicroStrategy's experience, even if we decide not to invest in Bitcoin?
Good question. One big takeaway is that the financial world, it's changing fast.
Definitely.
What was once considered fringe is now becoming mainstream.
It's true.
So whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out, it's so important to stay informed and keep learning.
I think another important takeaway is that innovation can come from anywhere,
Yeah.
Who would have thought a software company would become a major player in the world of Bitcoin?
It's true. You never know where the next big idea is going to come from.
And maybe the most important lesson here is that even with all this change and disruption, the fundamentals of investing still apply.
Yeah.
Diversification, risk management, having a long-term perspective.
Absolutely.
Those are words to live by, for sure. But before we get too philosophical, let's jump into the final part of this deep dive and explore some more specific questions about the future of MicroStrategy, Bitcoin, and the world of institutional finance. Welcome back to the deep dive. It feels like we've only just scratched the surface with this whole MicroStrategy thing.
Yeah, there's definitely more to unpack here. It's a story with lots of twists and turns, and it's not over yet.
Exactly. Like, how are regulators going to react to this whole thing? I mean, the lines between traditional finance and digital assets are getting kind of blurry, right?
Yeah, that's a huge question.
It is. Will we see, specific regulations for companies like MicroStrategy and this Bitcoin refinery model? Or will they try to make them fit into the existing rules, which might not really work that well?
Good point.
And what about other companies? Are we going to see more companies copying MicroStrategy's playbook? Could we have a whole bunch of these Bitcoin refineries popping up everywhere?
I mean, success usually leads to copycats, right? Especially in finance.
Sure.
So, if MicroStrategy keeps doing well, keeps attracting those big investors, others will definitely want a piece of the pie.
That makes sense. And, if this model becomes more common, could it eventually change how people see Bitcoin?
Oh, how so?
Like right now, a lot of people still see it as this volatile, risky asset, right? But what if it becomes just a normal part of any diversified portfolio?
That's an interesting thought.
It is. Imagine financial advisors recommending a certain percentage of Bitcoin alongside stocks and bonds.
That's pretty wild to think about.
It is, but online banking probably sounded pretty crazy not too long ago.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, and we can't forget about the impact on traditional financial institutions, right? Banks, asset managers. What happens to them if companies like MicroStrategy start doing some of their jobs?
Yeah, a lot of people in those industries are probably losing sleep over that.
I bet. Will they adapt to this new world?
Right.
Or will they try to fight it and maybe end up hurting themselves in the process?
Who knows, right? I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out.
That's true. Only time will tell. But, regardless of what happens, there's definitely some important lessons we can take away from this whole MicroStrategy story.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, one thing is the importance of staying ahead of the curve. MicroStrategy saw the potential in Bitcoin early on. They made a bold move, even when a lot of people were doubtful.
That takes guts.
And they didn't just buy it, like we've been talking about. They built a whole strategy around it.
Yeah.
They realized that real innovation isn't just about adopting something new. It's about figuring out how to make it work within existing systems.
That's a good point.
And for the average investor, the person who's listening to this and trying to figure out what it all means for them,
yeah, what would you say to them?
I'd say approach this whole world of digital assets with a healthy mix of curiosity and a little bit of skepticism.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Don't just blindly follow the hype, but don't ignore the potential either.
Right.
Do your research, figure out the risks, and then decide how this stuff fits into your own investing plans.
That's the key, right? Making informed decisions.
Exactly. And remember, the world of finance, it never stops changing. What seems groundbreaking today might be totally normal tomorrow.
It's crazy how fast things are moving.
Yeah, so stay informed, keep learning, and be open to new possibilities.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, on that note, this wraps up our deep dive into MicroStrategy. It's been a wild ride looking at the intersection of Bitcoin, institutional finance, and the future of money itself.
It really has. I hope everyone listening found it as interesting and informative as we have.
I think so too. And, if you want to keep exploring the world of financial markets, connect with other traders, or even share your own thoughts and ideas,
what should they do?
I'd say check out our sponsor, Kwolfs.
Oh, yeah. Kwolfs.
Their live streaming community trading platform is like the TikTok of financial markets. It's a fun, engaging way to dive into the world of trading.
I'll have to check that out myself.
So until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and as always, thanks for taking the deep dive with us.